on this edition of Native Report. Come with us to an all-native music festival where we go backstage with the blues rock band Indigenous. Meet a member of the greatest generation from the Bois Forte Reservation who shares his memories from World War II. And we learned about a landmark piece of legislation in the battle for treaty hunting and fishing rights. We'll also hear from the elders and learn something new about Indian country on this Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.
Proud of our young people when they graduate.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacey Thunder. Mato Nanji, longtime frontman of the blues rock band Indigenous, was on tour with his latest release. It brought him to a first ever all-native music festival on the western shore of Lake Superior.
As the wind blows across Bayfront Park in Duluth, Minnesota, bands are making their final sound checks for what is billed as the first ever all-native music festival in the city and surrounding region.
This is kind of a project, a dream that me and my wife had thought about a while back with doing something all-native as far as something here in Duluth and Cloquet and the surrounding area. And we thought, since I was at the Fond du Lac College, my wife is an instructor there. I also thought it'd be something neat to try for the student. They have a foundation that they hand out scholarships, and what a better way to do a big event like this. So it's coming together really nice, and we got a beautiful day for it.
For a few years, I've been thinking about having a Native music festival, and then I tried a little here and there to do things, and eventually, it's snowballing. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a wrong term, but we're trying to get momentum going in that direction to bring more awareness about Native music and musicians and culture. There are a lot of Native artists that are in the mainstream that we're not necessarily aware of because they're not singing or playing what we would identify as traditional Native music. Yeah, there's a lot of them, and so I'd love to see it turn into a festival here.
In addition to her band, Liz Jaakola and the Smokin' Chimokes, and the Native American Music Award-winning Oshki Gijig Singers, internationally known musician Pura Fay and Indigenous round out the bill.
Indigenous really originally started out with my brother and or two of my brothers and my sister, and then it's kind of like a family band, and then we toured around like that for probably about maybe around 10 years or so, and then they decided to go do their thing, or whatever they wanted to do, and we just and I just kept it going, just kept the name going, and I pretty much wrote all the material, so I mean it just felt right to keep the name going and the music going, so and that's originally that's what it was always about for me, so it was just getting the name out there and the music out there. I was probably about 14 or 15, I think, when I started, and that's the first time I ever try to pick it up and play, I guess. And before that, I was into drums, but we never had any drums. So my dad was a guitar player, so that's kind of where I found his guitar and his amps and stuff, and got started from there. I'm not really sure what the difference is between the, I guess, the commercial, music industry, and then I know there's getting to be a pretty cool big Native, industry, and a lot of different, musicians and artists, which is really cool. I think that's awesome, but, as for me, I never really, I guess I never, even when I started out, I never really looked at it as, anything being different. I've always just wanted to try to make good music and, get out there to music fans, and it didn't really matter to me, you know, what color they were or anything. You know, I just wanted to make music and, you know, take it to them.
Mateau has recorded with some of the biggest names in the business, such as David Hidalgo from Los Lobos and Luther Dickinson from the North Mississippi All-Stars and the Black Crowes. On this night, he is doing what he loves best, playing live in front of an audience.
For Indigenous.
Jimi Hendrix, grew up listening to Jimi Hendrix, Santana, just, you know, all the blues greats, you know, Albert King, you know, Freddie King, and, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan, just a wide range. Plus I grew up in the 90s too, so I grew up listening to like, you know, Pearl Jam, Black Crowes, and, you know, just different bands like that too, so I kind of had an influence on me, you know, on my music, I guess, you know, and kind of approach it a little different. You know, like, you know, if it's blues, then I tend to approach it a little different, you know, maybe a little more rock or something, you know. So I just, you know, will come up with an idea, I guess, and then, you know, I just kind of let it happen. You know, I never really like sit down and say, well, I'm gonna write a song today. You know, I just kind of, you know, even at sound check or something, you know, be playing around or doing whatever, and, you know, we'll just get an idea or something, you know, of a groove or a riff or something, and that's kind of how a lot of the songs start for me, I guess, songwriting. A lot of times just listening to other music too, you know, other people's music and writing is a big influence too, so you could do, you know, come up with ideas there. I don't know, for me it's just a lot of fun, you know, to be able to, you know, to do that and, you know, just come up with different ideas. Just keep trying to stay busy and get out there and try to get to as many fans as we can, music fans.
Did you know that the Wisconsin State Legislature passed laws mandating education about Wisconsin's Native American population? Negative events following a 1983 tribal hunting and fishing court case in Wisconsin made it clear to educators and legislators that many Wisconsin citizens did not understand the relationship between states and Indian tribes. As a way of combating racism and a lack of knowledge regarding Indian tribes and Indian people, an ad hoc commission on racism, the American Indian Language and Culture Board, and former Governor Tommy Thompson worked on language which the Wisconsin legislature put into law. The statutes, which are commonly referred to as Act 31, are designed to help Wisconsin citizens understand American Indian history, culture, and tribal sovereignty. The name is a reference to the budget bill, which was numbered Act 31 that year. The law requires state officials, school boards, and teachers to educate the public on Native American culture, language, and history.
Ojibwe elder Axel Holmes Sr. is a member of the greatest generation. growing up during the Great Depression and serving overseas during World War II. A decorated Army veteran, Axel claims he's not a hero. He only did what he thought was right.
On this warm, sunny day at the Bois Forte Veterans Memorial, the flags rustle in the breeze as an eagle flies overhead. It is here that Axel Holmes Sr. remembers his time of service in World War II.
Well, I was 18 when the war was declared. That was in December. But I went into the Army in March of 1943. That was a year later. I tried to get into the Navy at first, right after war was declared. The next day, some of us went to superiors to try to enlist, but we were too young. They said we had to have our parents' permission, but if I'd have used my head, I'd have forged your name and got in that way, but I was honest in them days. And so we waited and finally wound up being drafted. We first went to the induction center in Milwaukee, where we went through our preliminaries there, and after we'd been at, then they told us that we could go home for 3 weeks on leave. But I and a friend of mine, George Staples, he's from Danbury, we were in the CC camp together, so we were friends. And then we went to Fort Sheridan, where we did our real induction, where we took our tests, all that sort of thing. And then from there, we were fortunate that we trained as a battalion. You know, we were lucky that we didn't join a replacement depot and just get shoved in here and there. So we wound up at Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, where we were in the engineers, in the Air Force, but we were in the engineers.
Assigned to the 880th Airborne Engineer Aviation Battalion, Axel was stationed in New Guinea.
In this airborne, we had different equipment. It wasn't those heavy D8s anymore, but those small Clark Air tractors and so on. And that's what we used. They repaired airfields there. But I was fortunate to be assigned to a ration truck, and I drove the ration truck for it. So that's how we got it. It was hot there in the jungle. We were fortunate to get down there instead of going to Europe, because, well, we couldn't stand cold there. We know that some of the guys froze in their blankets in the winter, that they had there. That's one of the guys was telling us. We were in the Philippines on Luzon when the war ended. We were just off in Clark Field. When we landed at Clark Field, it was just nothing there. Just. But then they moved us further away, and then that's where the battalion and another colored battalion working together, they built a huge airfield there. I don't know what they were building it for, but it turned out that there was what's called a B-32. It's a huge airplane. I've only ever seen only one of them. It was parked there on the end of the runway when we saw it, and they had a B-17 beside it. That B-17 looked like a fighter plane. And I was in the hospital 74 days, and the second day, we went in on August 5th, that's the day they dropped the bomb, because the war was going on. Of course, when I came out, it was over, but the next day, some of the people there, I don't know what else, would print a mimeographed copy of news, but I remember that paper coming as we read it, said, "Atomic bomb rocks world," there was the headlines on that. And we still didn't understand what that was. But then as we read, they said that they're thinking that the war was going to be ending in 2 weeks. And of course, we didn't believe that yet. But it was over.
You want to come on this side then?
Today, Axel is joined by his daughter, Millie, as they view the various names on the stone monuments. He is one of only 2 surviving World War II veterans from Bois Forte. Much consideration went into selecting this site for the memorial.
I sat in on a few of the meetings that as they were developing this, and I contributed a little bit of the Anishinaabe, the spiritual part, helped out with the spiritual part of it. We're right in the front of the lake, and the island right behind me is a spirit island, and that's pretty strong to me. I feel this is very, very strong. It's a very strong setting, especially with that the island there. They call that Menominee, which is a spirit island, and it's very strong. The powwows that I go to, they really, really honor, especially the Ogijita, the one that, my interpretation, maybe other people have different definitions of Ogijita, and mine is the one who went up against the enemy and he came home. If it wasn't for these guys here, we wouldn't be here today. And it's always good to hear these people that are honoring the veterans.
This place is all about honoring our veterans. And even though Axel is a decorated veteran, he doesn't see himself as a hero of any sort.
I go up and look at my name and my son's name and some of my friends. A lot of them are up there, but most of them are gone now because there's only 2 of us World War II veterans left here now in that lake. So they're all gone. Being in the airborne and then being in the veteran as ration check, supplying all the troops over and over, that I contribute quite a bit. Well, I wasn't able to no hero because I wasn't. I just went to war and came home.
You know, I always think about when Osceola had 300 warriors left, and there was over 1,500 United States soldiers waiting for us to come out of the Everglades so they could kill us all. Our Seminole leader, or our chiefs at the time, Osceola was just a warrior, okay? He was just trying to do what he thought was best. And he fought against the United States government to a standstill. Matter of fact, for that period of time, they spent more on the Seminole Wars than they did any other war that they had with any other American Indian tribes. And we're still around, so. You know, we've seen, a lot of people say, well, you got a lot of obstacles in your way. But see, I like to look at things as obstacles being challenges rather than just something to look at and say that's an obstacle. It's a challenge to us to go ahead and keep going.
Back in the 1980s and 90s, Native nations in Wisconsin were asserting rights to hunt, fish, and gather as guaranteed by treaty. It was often met with protest and sometimes violence. This gave rise to a landmark piece of legislation in the battle for treaty hunting and fishing rights.
It was a very volatile exchange between Native people exercising their fishing rights in non-Native communities on the fishing landings in northern Wisconsin. It was an incredibly negative time for northern Wisconsin, probably in the history of the state.
The ugly scenes described by former Wisconsin state legislator Frank Boyle happened every spring over several years. The exercise of treaty rights by sovereign Native nations proved to be a decisive issue on which the state had to take action.
Native people were spearing walleye predominantly and fish because they were given the federal right to do so as a result of the previous salmon war struggle in Oregon that was litigated on behalf of Native people. every national news broadcast carried the epitaph on the landings, save a walleye, kill an Indian, kind of racist jargon. And so the legislature subsequently was incredibly disturbed by the imagery, if nothing else, if not the actual practice. And they asked the American Indian Study Committee in 1988, which I was just the new chair of, to attempt to intervene, to analyze the problem, to see what was happening, and to see if we could come up with some sort of solution. And we concluded that there was an incredible cultural gap that separated the Indian and the non-Indian community, a gap that perhaps potentially could be bridged through an understanding in public education. We knew that we had to start with young people in the public school system. And so we designed a curriculum that mandated that a course in Indian education, culture, and history be taught in the public schools, both in the elementary, junior high, and in the senior high social study classes as a part of social study curriculum. And we funded it. I believe initially it was about $500,000 in the budget which Act 31 provided in 1988.
Those funds helped develop the American Indian Studies Summer Institute, hosted by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. In attendance was Alan Caldwell, who helped draft the language for the bill and Act 31.
When I was working at the department, it was called the American Indian Language and Culture Education Board. It was a 9-member board made up of tribal members from around the state. I was on that board at the time, and we were an advisory board to the UW system, DPI, the technical school system, and the Higher Educational Aids Board to put input on Indian issues and concerns to those institutions. And so Frank Boyle, a legislator who represented the region around LeGarde down towards Lac de Flambeau. So one day when this whole controversy started and these protests were going on the lakes up around Lac de Flambeau, LeGarde, Bad River area, so he called the staff person from the Language and Culture Board, and at the time I was doing the Indian education things for the agency. So he asked a meeting with the two of us, and his basic question was, what are they teaching the schools about these things? What are they teaching about the history of the tribes in Wisconsin? A couple weeks later, we got a second call from him, and he said he came in and he said, kind of directed it towards me. He said, what I'd like to do, he said, I want to come up with something a little more substantive, and that the school districts can teach more of the history and things of that, especially this treaty rights issue. So he said, can you come back to me with a plan in a week? So I got a call from his staff person. She said, Representative Boyle would like you and Bill Olnick and Barbara Thomas, who was the staff person on the Language and Culture Board, to come to the governor's press conference this afternoon when he's going to release the biennial budget, because there's some things in there about Indian education. So we'd like you to be there. So okay. So Bill and I go there, and as we're walking in the door to the hearing room, Boyle, one of his staff members, has passed us some papers, and she said, this is what's in the bill, and this is the language on the Indian education. And that's what's in there now, that was the language for what we call Act 31. And Act 31 actually is the title of the budget bill.
Both Boyle and Caldwell are happy with the outcome of Act 31. It has raised the awareness of Native issues across Wisconsin.
As far as the legislation overhaul, I'm happy that we have this. In the 20 years since that legislation has been passed, I think the big question is, of the 400 plus school districts in the state of Wisconsin and the 33 teacher training institutions, how many of them are actually and have implemented the requirements? The Wisconsin Indian Education Association has done a couple surveys of the districts and the teacher training institutions about what they're doing and things like that. And there are some misconceptions out there. I even heard it here this week at the Institute. Some of the teachers here that said in their districts that the thought is that it only applies to Indian children, and have to inform them, no, it applies to every single students in a public school system in the state of Wisconsin.
These wars raged for 2 or 3 years in Wisconsin, but I think that ultimately Act 31, as it exists now, 25 years later practically, has done a great deal to teach both Indian people and non-Indian community members alike how we can live together in what we have to offer one another, something that was never being taught in the public schools about the cultural influences and differences of Native people and the community in general.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us at nativereport.org and on Facebook. Thank you for spending this time with us here at Native Report. I'm Stacey Thunder. See you next time.
Stacey Thunder is a member of and legal counsel for the Red Lake Nation, and Tad Johnson is a member of the Bois Forte Band of Chippewa and is chair for the American Indian Studies Department on the campus of the University of Minnesota Duluth.
Thank you.